I've seen some of you on some of our past webinars. It was good to see some familiar faces. My name is Dwayne Brejak. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the executive director for the Michigan chapter of NASW. I've been with NASW for 12 years now. I started at our association right after I finished my MSW in 2012. I was one of those, I don't know if other macro folks are on the call today, but I was a macro focused student. Policy and evaluation was my track at the University of Michigan. Thought after graduation I would be out in DC doing some lobbying work and kind of working on the more macro front of things. And one of my coworkers and colleagues in my social work program saw a position opened up at the local chapter of NASW here in Michigan and said, Dwayne, this is your position. You need to go and try out for this role. And I know for our students, one of the things we're going to talk about today is expanding your network and building out your social work connections. And when you think about the jobs you're going to want or have access to post-graduation, a lot of times those people who are in our circles know us better than we know ourselves, and they're going to have access to resources and potential job opportunities that we may not see on a regular basis. Tonight, really, this is going to be an interactive presentation. I want to tell you all a little bit about some ways to get involved in your professional organization, ways to get connected, ways to utilize NASW throughout your social work journey. And hopefully this will also be an opportunity for you all to ask any questions you might have about NASW, whether that's at the state or national level, and I'll do my best to answer those questions. So as we get started today, I want to drop into the chat, if you will all put what state you're coming in from and what social work program you are representing. I'm also going to pop open a poll just to see how many of our folks on our BSW versus MSW versus doctoral students. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll while you all are also typing into the chat the questions that are on the screen. Carolina, Florida State. Excellent. New York, Hunter College. Another South Carolina, Kansas, Delaware, Winthrop University. Love the South Carolina folks. Great. Texas, South Florida. Wonderful. Washington State University, Utah, North State, Winthrop, Michigan. Hey, my Oakland University folks. Good to have you on. Looks like from our poll, we've got mostly MSW students on. About 90% of the folks here today are MSW students. You know, one of the things I always talk to students about is, especially early on in your social work career, is how are you expanding your social work bubble? Michigan, well, not just Michigan, nationally, social work is a growing profession. And there are lots of us out there. There are lots of students in social work programs. And so as you approach graduation, one of the questions you want to be thinking about is how many social work students and social work professionals have I connected to outside of just my program within my particular institution? And NASW or other social work organizations are one really good way to build out your network before that period. So thank you all for sharing that. The other thing I'd like to also remind us all is we're all humans. We have a lot of interests. We have a lot of passion areas that we come to our space with. After your professional social journey, how does your whole picture of yourself add into the career that you ultimately want to get into social work? You know, I put on here just a couple of things that make me who I am. I'm a musician, I'm an activist, I'm a CrossFitter, I'm a board of directors, I'm a board member, I'm a singer, I am a lobbyist, and as well as many other maybe more professional titles that you would see as my role in NASW. My technical role as executive, but also I'm a supervisor, a hiring manager, a graphic designer, an MC, an event planner, a photographer, a social media coordinator, an ethics consultant. And so as you think about your professional journey in social work, I really want you to remember what are those core components that make you a unique candidate for an employer? What are the things that you're going to bring into an organization outside of maybe your traditional social work skills that you're learning in your program? And the things that you're gonna that are ultimately going to be helpful for you to maintain your work-life balance, your self-care, in a job that may have some more stressful times than others. So it's a little bit about me. Uh, and then we're a group full of students here. So I'm curious if anybody is willing to unmute or raise your hand or in the chat type tell us why social work, what brought you into this profession? Why are you here with us?
I can speak. My name is
Yeah,
Jazz.
Jasmine, please.
I'm from South Carolina. What made me come towards social work? I have a passion of helping people, and I always had that passion. And while I was employed at DSS, it grown even more. Just trying to put myself out there, understanding the people, their barriers, and trying to just help them out and provide them as much help and meeting them on a level. So that made me come more towards, getting into the social work field.
Yeah, wonderful. Jazz, while I've got your line open, do you have a particular population area that you're particularly interested in working with?
Um, I did. I really do love working with like the teenagers. Um, but I'm open to working with any population, honestly.
That's great. I mean, I think what they do is, first of all, the degrees that you can get, you can work in any sort of setting, in any city, doing new and inventive things as well as more traditional services. So it's a fantastic degree. Thank you for sharing.
You're
Crystal.
welcome.
Hello, my name is Crystal. My reason for choosing social work is just like Jasmine said. I love helping people. I've worked with kids for a long time already. I also have an associate in psychology, BA in sociology with a minor in psych, and I just wanted to see the broader look, and I feel like social work it's really that field, and since I'm always involved around that area, is something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, thank you for that, Crystal. And what state are you coming from?
New York.
New York, wonderful. Yeah, I do not have a social work undergrad. My undergrad was psychology and music. So when I finished my undergrad, I really wanted to, and I got heavily involved in politics at the time. I wanted to find a degree that infused the clinical aspects of psychology that I liked with the political organizing that I really enjoyed in my passion. And social work was one. Again, one of my friends was like, "Do I need to go get your MSW?" Public has a lot of misperceptions. And I know you all know this about what social workers do, how we work. And I will say I fell into it. I didn't know anything else except for child welfare component. And I did my own research. I was like, oh, this is it. When I got to section 6 of the Code of Ethics, I was like, oh, this makes social work as a little bit different sort of a degree than a counseling degree or a psychology degree because it incorporates the political and the advocacy component, which is really important to the work that we're doing. Um, Andrea or Andrea.
Hi, it's Andrea. I was actually about to put my hand down because you almost entirely described my experience. I'm also macro, and my undergrad, I'm sorry, was in psychology. And when I was studying psychology, it really became like psychology is very focused. It is the one thing they're like, hey, this is what we're looking at. And my interest was kind of like, well, what about the rest of the system, right? What, like, holistically speaking, if you're trying to help someone, you can't just approach it from this one perspective. What about everything else? And that kind of led me into social work.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and I think we all recognize there's lots of systems that are broke right now. And regardless of if you're in a clinical track, a meso track, or a macro track, we all have to be aware of kind of how the systems are impacting us at every level. So wonderful to have you in the program, Andrea. Hunter.
Hi. Uh, uh, Based around a personal experience that I had and really opened my eyes to what social work has potential to be. My initial background, my undergrad, is in art, um, and going after my NSW, and really looking forward to serving the queer community, LGBTQ.
Yeah, and art and social work has lots of great intersections. And here in Michigan, there's some of our schools of social work that actually have many different art installations or part of the curriculum that's built in. And as a therapeutic method can be super helpful in many settings. Wonderful. Lateria.
Can you hear me? Oh, it sounds like it's breaking up. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Oh, you can? Okay, sorry. I didn't necessarily intend to raise my hand, but I will go. I actually became interested in social work by way of just trying to explore. So I initially went to school for criminal justice and criminology in undergrad and then a minor in psych. And so I thought I wanted to go to law school, but then I had a victims advocacy course that kind of steered me in a different direction. Sorry, my puppy's upset. He doesn't like that I'm on the phone. So I had a conversations with my advisors and they were saying, have you ever thought about social work? And I had I would say I was ignorant to the field of social work. I thought that it wasn't as wide as it is, and that there weren't many options for me. And so I was encouraged to do my research about the field and, come up with a conclusion at that point. So once I did, I was like, wow, actually, there's so much that I could really do in this field. And so that's kind of what led me to social work, outside of enjoying helping people. But I got here, by error in a way. So
Yes, I feel you. Sometimes we don't even know this is the path until you poke around a few options.
right.
Thanks for being here. And feel free to bring the fur babies onto the camera. We all love that in our Zoom meetings.
Okay.
All right. We've got Shikaria next and then Jennifer, and then we'll go ahead and move on. Are you there, Shikaria or Shikaria? I'm back. Jennifer Stevens.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. Currently live in Illinois. Um, I have a lot of personal lived experiences. And so just with like resources that have been given to me, referrals that I've gone through, I saw how helpful social work could be. I'm a little later in life delving into the topic or the subject, um, so for me, I'm kind of a non-traditional student just getting involved. I do work in a shelter setting, but I would like, after I get my master's, I would like to get into forensic social work or even veteran military social work.
Well, and lived experience is very important in this profession. And so I hope you'll find that in your program that will be an asset. I'm sure it's a field that has many non-traditional students, maybe a proportion of traditional students. So yes, we're so glad to have you. And I saw a few other comments into the chat around just years of experience, either in the related profession or in maybe in positions that are related to social work. I was at an orientation for one of our schools in Michigan yesterday, and quite a lot of the students had been working alongside social workers for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and really made the transition into the profession because of either leadership growth or they could move up in their positions, get paid more, or saw that the education would be an asset ultimately to their future goals. So thank you all for sharing those. I want to just talk a little bit about what does social work look like right now, and then we'll have a couple more opportunities for engagement from the group as well. So I hope y'all will stick through that and provide some other feedback a little bit later on. But you might be aware social work is one of the fastest growing professions in the United States. This is the time to be a social worker and a social work student. Everybody wants you and needs you as employers. And so this is the time to be going through a social work program, to be thinking about advocacy and salary negotiation and what a career trajectory can look like. The pandemic opened up really a national landscape around having more honest conversations around mental health and behavioral health, which is long overdue. And so we've seen that trickle down into pretty quickly, maybe more it was a flood, into positions around behavioral health, more staffing. Uh, as of now, we're almost at 750,000 social workers in the United States. I expect that to grow almost 10% more in the next decade. Now, as it relates to, there are over 50,000 BSW students in the United States. So when you're thinking about who can I connect with, build network out before graduate, one of the first places to start is your other students that are in a similar program, that are going through a similar internship. So looking at either the BSW or the MSW student population. Not surprising. I think if you know anything about social work, we're still a pretty female dominated profession and a fairly white profession. Although in our schools of social work, we are seeing diversity increase, and we're looking much more like the communities we serve than we ever have, which is wonderful. So at the BSW level, we know that the Great Lakes region is also our largest area for social work students at the bachelor's level. Fun fact, Michigan is really the largest state for bachelor's level social workers. We have 4,000 BSW level students just in our state alone. When we look at the MSW level, there's 63,000 MSW students across the country. So when you think about your particular program that you're in, there are schools of social work that are as small as 5 or 6 in a cohort. And then there are large programs that are 450, 500 in a class. So lots of ways to connect to people. And especially if you find yourself in a smaller program, if you're an online program that maybe you're not connecting a lot with other students, finding a national audience can be a really helpful way to round out your network of people. At the master's level, maybe also not surprisingly, mental health and behavioral health is one area practice, followed by youth and family children, then school social work. This may vary a little bit state by state, but I would say this is accurate for most programs across the country. We look at some of the trends that you all are stepping into as students. During the pandemic, we saw a dip in overall enrollments for all higher education institutions. Social work as a profession has been one of the quickest to rebound since the pandemic, and even some of our programs didn't see much dips last 4 years. Like I mentioned, we're seeing a much larger racial diversity within our social work student body, will hopefully translate into a much more well-rounded profession over the next 20 to 30 years. COVID impacted a lot about how we practice and how you all are in schools. We're in a Zoom right now, which was the case even a few years ago. So many of our programs are hybrid or completely virtual. We've seen AI intersect all areas of social work practice and have seen many of our traditional social work employers really struggle to retain as folks have options to move to home or work from home environments, and kind of the new areas of practice over the last couple of years. For my macro people in the room, you'll be happy to know there have folks in macro students national level. It still is only probably 3 to 5% of social work students are macro focused, but we do see more interest in advocacy and policy work across all areas of social work, regardless of if folks are in macro tracks or not. Part of that is due to the times we all live in, where we have to be really engaged in politics, and so many things both here in the United States and globally are impacting how the work that we do. And then there's lots of workforce advocacy and changes going on at the national level. You probably all are hearing things around social work examination and licensing changes, salary transparency, looking so licensing compact, which is passed in about 22 states at this point. So there's a lot of things to be involved with that are directly related to social work, and I hope, and we'll talk today about how you can be involved specifically in some of that policy space. Now, I know today's topic is to talk specifically about NASW. So just a face level, it's the largest organization for social workers in the world. We've been since 1955, so next year is our 70th anniversary. And we were founded back in 1950, really because there were seven different social work organizations that existed at the time that came together to form NASW, partially because it's hard to do anything in our silos. So whether that's policy work, practice work, and so the seven organizations merged to have over 100,000 members across the country, as well as so when you join NASW, you get a membership into the national organization and into a state chapter. So all from all across the country would belong to wherever you're currently living or going to school. If you move throughout your professional journey, that state chapter affiliation will kind of follow you wherever you end up going. And that's really important, especially as you look at licensing, because licensing is different in pretty much every state in the United States. Getting connected to resources, education, networks, that is also where your state chapter is really going to be heavily focused, as well as the advocacy work specific to your state. You can see this color-coded map that's here. So this kind of shows how many members are in each state. And that somewhat is varied based off of the state's population, the social in that particular state. So in my state, we have 36 schools of social work. We have 24 bachelor's programs, master's programs, and 3 more starting in the fall. There are some states that have 1 school of social work. So we know that social work varies greatly state by state, but it's really important to get connected to people locally as you are in your social work program, and then thinking about what is the larger picture of the social work landscape looking like. NASW as an organization, our goals are to support you as a social worker or future social worker. I'm in a very strange job as it relates to a social work degree. The easiest way I explain what I do is I'm a social worker for social workers. So whatever social workers need or social work students need, whether that's an advocate, a training, a network, that's what NASW exists to be as your professional association. It doesn't mean when you call our office, we may not know everything, but partially you as a social worker or as our community of social workers are the experts. You at minimum probably heard about the NASW Code of Ethics, so maintaining professional standards of practice, and that is something that you all are a part of. The Code of Ethics gets updated every several years. That is open to the public social work community for comment period. That gets ultimately voted on by a voted member block of our membership. And so we want to make sure that all of our social workers are helping design and update our ethical standards as practice changes. The last time the Code of Ethics was significantly updated, maybe not surprisingly, a couple of years ago, as world changes, as our changes. And then lastly, NASW advances the policies that align with our professional values. So we have ethics, we have standards of kind of professional guidance as an organization and as a person. And so we work at the local, state, and federal level to look at policy decisions and practice decisions that can be bettered to support social work clients. To a couple of kind of key areas that I've broken down where I think membership can specifically help students. That is community building and networking, professional development, legislative advocacy, financial resources and scholarships, and social work news. If at any time you want to kind of hone in and dig deep into benefits, because social work is so broad and varied in terms of where people work, there are a million resources on our national website. So you can dig into gerontology, social work, you can dig into clinical practice, you can dig into macro level resources, you can dig into oncology, social work. There's lots of things based off of your particular area at social workers that you can kind of find in your own time. But as it relates to community building and networking, this is what I think is the key benefit to an organization like NASW. And we'll also talk about some other organizations that are not NASW that I also highly recommend getting connected to, because the more you can expand that network now, the better your profession. One of the things, if you're a member, there are events that happen at NASW in time after events, local working meetups. As students, know that you are able to and invited to attend all of the things. Even though you need to, and we want to expand your knowledge and skill set. Many of you, like you've Hey folks, sorry about that. I don't know what happened to my internet, but I'm back. So hope I wasn't out for too long. Thanks for holding on. Let me pull back my screen. See, we love technology. We've just learned to roll with it in this pandemic space. So again, I apologize for that. But like I was saying, hopefully you heard, we want you as students to belong and to be a part of the work that we do. We want you to come to conferences. We want you to bring your expertise to the table. We would want you to share with us in your advocacy spaces. And if you're doing really cool work, either in your classrooms, at your internship, bring that to your local NASW chapter. We can highlight you in our newsletters, in our emails, on our social media. We want to get you that visibility too before you graduate. One way that you can connect is the My NASW community. This is an online, it's kind of like LinkedIn meets Facebook, where you can ask questions, you can share resources, you can connect to 60,000 social work students through that one platform. We also have a platform for all social workers, so there's about 100,000 on that, and there are hundreds of active threads. So if you have questions about supervision, around ethics, if you have seen a news article that's about social work, you post that and share those resources. So that's another really good space that's free and available for you to connect to people with. I love the professional recognition stuff. I think social workers don't do a good enough job about owning our awesomeness. And so if I could, I'd give you all a high five right now, because I know you all are some amazing humans for choosing to be in this profession. But we have opportunities to run for leadership positions. This can be at the local level, the state level, and the national level. We have boards of directors, and have ambassadors or student engagement platforms. We have annual awards, including student awards, getting published, and then speaking at state or national ways to get your visibility out there as a student. If you're a part of a student group on campus, we want to partner with you and elevate the work that you all are doing. And then if you want to get more connected to specifically topic areas, so say you're exploring gerontology or you want to do LGBT related work, many of our chapters, as well as our national organization, have work groups and committees that you can join and listen in on. You don't even necessarily have to be an academic, but if you're wanting to explore different areas of social work, that's a really good way to learn about what are social workers doing on the ground in X area that I'm interested in. So those are just a couple of quick ways that you can start building your community network. Some links where you can find just events going on at the national level. Just go to socialworkers.org/events, and you can find any of the national events that are going on, including our series that you're on today. We do these webinars every month, the third Thursday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. But if you've got a topic you'd like to see, if you'd like to pull a student panel together to help run one of these, please reach out to me. But you can find all of those on the national website. And then if you want to see what's going on locally, you can go to socialworkers.org/chapter, and you can find your specific state or province, and that will connect you to the chapter staff and the calendars that are going on in your particular state. So we talked a little bit earlier about the type of social work that you all are interested in. Does anybody have a dream job or agency in mind when they think long-term in their social work journey that they'd like to end up in? Sandra,
Hi, can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So dream job, I would love to create, or I'm working on creating my own nonprofit and using my social work skills and experience to provide nonprofit services for teenagers on a micro and a macro level. So when I got into social work, I didn't realize there was this whole macro world, which I'm now discovering. So I'm glad that you're bringing it up because it's a huge part of having a nonprofit. So I would be, so essentially it would be bringing in like a micro direct social work perspective for teenagers that struggle with their emotions, and also using a macro level to possibly call for emotional intelligence classes in schools. So advocating for their education within the school to have more of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, fabulous. I mean, entrepreneurship in social work is really important. And as you think about, as you go through your social work journey, you may want to end up looking at electives that are outside of traditional social work skills. And so I know a lot of social work students also look at taking, if you've got optional electives, taking classes in the business school or the public health school or the public policy school that may help get to those goals, because business skills are really important in social work. We need to know about money. We need to know how to build organizations. We need to know how to staff organizations and supervise people and all of those things. You may get some of that in your social work program, but you may need to look into other parts of your university or school to get some.
Yes, I agree with that. Thank you.
Yeah, very exciting. Rachel in the chat said interested in working at the VA hospital, coming from a military family. Lots of social workers, the VA is the #1 hirer of social workers as an entity in the whole United States. It's also one of the best paid places for social workers to start and continue their career. So yeah, absolutely love the VA. And when it relates to licensing, also the VA is a pretty good space to be. They support their staff, and it's pretty easy to get your license transferred. Wendy, yes, liking to work with immigrant students and folks who, we need folks who are in the immigration space at the clinical, the macro, the educational level. Yeah, wonderful stuff. Okay, I see a hand. Oh, I'm not gonna be able to pronounce that name. If could you pronounce your name for me?
I go by Ife. The full name is
Ife,
Ife.
yes, we'd love to hear you. What's your dream job?
So someone already said immigrant students, but I currently work with first generation and students from low income backgrounds, specifically college students. So I would really like to work on a college campus. Also, I just love higher education. So something of that nature.
Yeah, thank you, Ife. Higher education is a space where there are lots of MSWs and BSWs, whether that's in career services and international support, in spaces around DEI. Higher ed, absolutely great space for folks to be thinking about careers. I also want that's going to look like 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now. There's a really amazing social worker, Laura Nissen, out of the University of Washington, that has been doing some futures thinking and futures research about social work. And I love, she has a whole job database of what are profession might look like when we think about water rations navigator, ethical AI manager, elder care robot calibration specialist, underground abortion access navigator. Unfortunately, that's not a job of the future. That's happening now in some states that are kind of rolling back abortion. Futures generations advocate, mutual aid hub. So thinking, what's wonderful about social work is that we can do pretty much everything, and we have to. People ultimately rely on social workers in many spaces that you wouldn't think. There are social workers that work in Walmart. There are social workers that work in Target. We have about 40 social workers that work in Best Buy in my state, and they look at adaptive technology. We have folks who work in NASA and are looking at how are we going to, if we have people live in different parts of the galaxy, ensure how do we still make connections? How do we, when the people come back here, how do they reunite with folks? How are we looking at psychedelics in social work? When we think about reparations or eliminating the prison industrial complex, what are we going to do with those spaces? So it's a really fascinating, and I think this is a fun time to be thinking about, might we be? How is technology intersecting with our work? And so as you all go through your social work programs, don't be afraid to really put yourself out there to be, even when you start your internships, think about what that position could look like in a dream world and what that organization might be 100 years from now and what those job titles might look like and how we start building to them as a profession. As it relates to your professional development and job search, NASW has the World Career Center where you can search jobs that are currently open, interviewing tips, salary skills, resume and cover letter assistance. I highly recommend utilizing whatever is available at your School of Social Work or your institution of higher education. Your student loans are paying for that access, so absolutely use as much as available to you now while you're on campus or remote. But NASW, it's a really good time early in your social work journey to start looking up what are the jobs out there right now. And so you can tailor your education a bit towards it. If you see that there are 5 jobs that are particularly of interest to you and they all have the same skill set that's required, you have that now. And if not, can you incorporate some of that into your social work curriculum? If you're looking to get into a management role and all the positions are asking for a grant writing experience, may make sense to take a grant writing class, or maybe a public speaking class, or an improv class. There's lots of skills that can be absolutely helpful for a social work degree, regardless of kind of the job you end up in. And I think speaking is a really important one. Writing skills, all of those are going to be beneficial regardless of the types of job you end up in. So you can look at job link. You can upload your resume whenever you're kind of getting to that point. And then your state chapter is really going to be what's going to be helpful for licensing support and resources, guidance around examination preparation, advocacy related to career stuff. In Michigan, we have Force and Working Conditions Committee that works on, we're doing a salary survey, we're working on some collective bargaining toolkits. So just being connected locally on what particular things are going to be most helpful for you during your career journey. And I would say one of the things that drew me to NASW and social work in general is that our profession is an advocacy-based profession and a political profession. And I will say this out loud to any group that I have the opportunity to. Social work is political. That doesn't mean it's always partisan, but it is political, and all of the work that we do has systemic level impacts. And so in a year that we know that there is a big election, elections too that are important in all of our states, it is more important than ever that as social workers we're engaged in that process, that we can talk with our clients, our communities, our organizations around where we can be visible and vocal in advocacy spaces, and what's going on kind of locally into your area. What I love to do in my speeches as giveaway prizes. So my question to y'all is, can you name one of our BSWs or MSWs in Congress? And I've given you a little hint by putting their pictures up here. But can anybody name one of these 5 humans? Giving away some t-shirts to the folks who bravely guessed. Got some Michigan people on here. Okay, we got first one I see is Melissa. First cinema, yes, Melissa, you're correct. So when you see my email at the end, will you please email me? I just need your address, your name, and your t-shirt size, and you'll have a t-shirt, a social work swag t-shirt coming in the mail this week. Yeah, Kirsten Sinema is one of our 2 senators in the U.S. House. The U.S. Senate. She is independent in Arizona. Clean, yes, absolutely. Our second person, Barbara Lee, that is the middle person on our screen. Barbara Lee is a congresswoman from California, the 13th district. Now, I saw your hand next. Do you have a guess for one of the next ones? And I'll get into the next person in the chat.
Was it me? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Daniela?
Yes. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
excellent. Yeah, who's your guess? We
I
can hear
think
you.
the first one, her name is Debbie, if I'm not wrong. I don't remember her last name, but I know her name is Debbie.
You are correct. That is Debbie Stabenow, Michigan's senator. She was the first ever female elected to a national position. Is retiring this year. We're so sad to see her go. Absolutely. So Daniela, you have won a shirt. Ka, Sylvia Garcia, y'all are doing good. You might have been Googling, which is fine. That's allowed in Zoom meetings. Sylvia Garcia is the 4th person here from Texas. And then we've got our final one also in the chat from Rona, Hillary Skolton. Hillary Skolton's our newest BSW in the U.S. House, also Michigan, the 3rd. So yes, $5. Thank you for participating and sharing. But we need more social workers in office. And this is just the folks at the U.S. level. And 3 of these 5 are retiring this year. So we will be down to likely 2 come after January, which is very sad. But we want to make sure that social workers get elected at kind of every space, and that we also then can utilize them to move more friendly policy legislation forward. As you all build towards your advocacy work in your social work programs, there's lots of resources through NASW that you make sure makes your work easier. We have sign-on letters, statements, we have policy agendas and policy issues that you can find information around a whole range of specific federal level policy. We also have a political action committee, which for those folks who are really love campaign work and election work. So if you want to be a part of your state chapter's political action committee, we're in the process right now of endorsing candidates. We're looking at social workers and social work friendly people to support at the local, state, and federal level. We will do local campaign and get out the vote events. There's information around registering to vote, action centers, things to make your life easy. And when you get into your policy classes where you're also having to write about policy issues that are current, this is a really great space, the socialworkers.org/advocacy, to find what we are working on as a national organization related to social work practice and policy. I will always put a plug in an election year. If you are not registered to vote, we highly recommend going to usa.gov/register to vote, and you can find or update your voter registration information. But this is an important year. We're going to be doing some toolkits for students that you'll see in the next couple of weeks to hopefully engage campuses around voter engagement. And if this is a passion area of yours, we would love to have you involved in that work. Some other resources, financial, everyone likes money, right? One of the things that I have been very happy and honored to be a part of in the last couple of years is finding ways in my state to create paid internship opportunities. Nationally, we've had some really fantastic success around student loan debt relief and cancellation. We have some really good resources for student loan management. Once you graduate, you'll in that. But we have scholarships, we have fellowships, we have other funding that's available to BSW, MSW, and doctoral level students nationally. And many of your state chapters are going to have specific scholarships that are available in your state. Some of them are still open. So if you are looking for some additional financial support this year, I'd recommend checking out your state specific site. And lots of specific discounts that are tied to your membership. So liability insurance. This is a question as you start your social work program or as you go through your social work program. You may want to ask your school about how they provide or don't provide liability insurance to you. So this is what protects you when you're in your internship. If say you're with a client and they slip and fall, so you don't get sued. Many schools of social work, especially the larger ones, have blanket coverage that covers the entire student body. But if there are some programs that require to maybe your seminar classes. So that's something that you'll want to know about. But once you graduate, you'll need liability insurance, especially folks who are working in clinical settings. We do discounts on therapy platforms, office programs, things like that you may need throughout your career or want throughout your career. Early in this presentation, I talked about, one of the things I think is really critical for students to make sure you have access to information. Not every school of social work is created equal. Not everybody on this call is going to get the same information given to you by your program, by your faculty, by your fellow students. Some schools have really robust ways for students to share information with each other, whether that's Facebook groups or Discord groups or Google groups or text threads, whatever. And other schools really have no methods that they're communicating through with their faculty. And so NASW does provide a lot of information about what's going on in social work, what are some of the high level issues that we're facing or working on as a profession. We have emails that come out, we have magazines that come out, we do podcasts, blogs. So those are also spaces that if you want to get published or if you want to be a participant in one of those, please ask us to be a part of that. We also talked about the MyNASW, the virtual community platform earlier. So I highly recommend if you haven't poked around the MyNASW space to do that as you start your program. And putting the social in social work, that's kind of my theme of all of this presentation today. There are so many amazing social workers doing some really cool things that as you start your social work journey, get connected to as many of them as you can. And so I'll name some other ones outside of NASW because you may or may not be familiar with some of these other organizations. The National Association of Black Social Workers, the Network for Social Work Management, the Association for Community Organization and Social Administration, School Social Work Association of America, Society for Social Work and Research, Congressional Research Institute for Social Work and Policy, Clinical Social Work Association, the International Federation of Social Workers, the National Rural Social Work Caucus, and the Society for Social Work Leadership in Healthcare. These are all organizations that have student memberships. Some of them are free, some of them have charges to them. But if I could magically give a magic wand, I would love for you all to be connected to as many of these organizations as possible. So at the minimum level, if you're on social media, connect to all of these organizations on their platforms. Then you're going to at least be in a little information that they're posting, what's going on in their event spaces. And even if you can't afford to be a member or participate in that particular time period, that will at least give you updated information. NASW, we're on all the socials, so find us on whatever ones you have. I will say that LinkedIn probably prior to COVID was not something I would have recommended students really have a LinkedIn profile, but it has changed in the last couple of years, and LinkedIn has like resurged in social work. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, I do recommend building one out. That's something that with my interns, I always put into their learning agreement as part of their professional development, so you can actually use your internship time to build out your kind of professional spaces. So if you need another assignment to build into your learning agreement, that's one you can say Dwayne at NASW suggested it. But these are all organizations that are really great and doing some wonderful work. Some of them, as you can see, are specific to types of practice. Some of them are thin groups, and some of them are more large scale, like NASW, where we kind of cover all types of social workers and all across the U.S. Membership does cost money. I wish we could just make it free for everybody, but it's $60 for a student membership for a year. That's about 75% off the full member rate. When you join as a student, like I mentioned, you get into the national chapter and into your state chapter. If you move throughout your social work journey, that state chapter will follow you wherever you go. For the MSW students on the call, if you joined as a BSW student and now have transferred into an MSW program and went to renew online, you probably saw a higher renewal rate than you were expecting. All you need to do is call our national membership hotline, and they can update your graduation date and keep you in at the student rate for as long as you're a student. And when you join as a student, you also get 2 or 3 years of discounted membership after you graduate. We call that the transitional period, where you build up to the full member rate a few years out from graduation. So socialworkers.org/join is the easiest place to go and do that. And then you'll get information both from the national and your state chapter about how to kind of utilize your benefits once you do. I'm going to put contact information here as well, just so you had a human to the association. There's about 215-ish staff across NASW nationally. At the state level, we range from 1 person in a state to maximum, I think there's like 10 staff at the California chapter or something like that. But most of us are very small staffed. And so get to know your local people. Those are the folks who are doing the work on the ground on your behalf. And they absolutely want your support. They want your work with them. Follow me on LinkedIn. If you've got questions just related to membership at any time or social work practice, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available. So I wanted to use, we've got some time, whatever time we want to use for the rest of this, to just get any questions that you have answered, or if you would like me to demo any parts of the NASW website, I can show you all the Career Center, I can show you advocacy spaces, if there are anything that you all would find particularly helpful. So yeah, I'd just like to leave the rest of our space to any questions you all might have. I was thinking I'm going to drop my email into the chat again for anybody who won one of the t-shirts. Please just email me your shirt size and your address, and I will hopefully get that out this week or early next week to y'all. There's no questions. We can go ahead and wrap up a little early tonight. I want to thank you all for choosing social work. We are so excited to have you in this profession. We need you more than ever. We want you to be rabble rousers. We want you to be out there doing advocacy work in your communities. We want to know what you need. And if you're having ethical dilemmas, legal dilemmas, practice dilemmas, please reach out to us. Hunter, yeah, good question. What is the trending career paths for new MSW students? Great question. I feel like one of the things that's happening right now is social workers are starting to go into many uncharted spaces, more corporate spaces. When we're thinking about wellness programs, there are spaces for social workers that maybe didn't exist 5 or 10 years from now. AI and technology is creating some really fun and new areas of social work, like avatar therapy, where you're creating virtual versions of yourself and your clients are creating virtual versions and you're meeting up in a virtual space to have sessions. And there's lots of ethical questions and legal questions as we move into those spaces too. So as the next generation of social workers, thinking about where is your role in helping us determine as professionals, how do we handle this ethically, legally platform? You probably have all seen BetterHelp and all of those online platforms that are trying to fill a behavioral health or a mental health need out there. Texting platforms. I will say be cautious about those online platforms. Not all of them are great. Not all of them will pay you well. They have money for advertising, but sometimes they're really not super ethically practicing. So just be cautious when you're looking at national or international programs that are recruiting you. What does the fee split look like? What is the support for supervision and licensing? What sort of continuing education or professional development is provided for you? Does it qualify for student loan forgiveness? All of those things you want to be thinking about. And similarly, I'd say one of the shifts we've seen in the last few years, really partially due to the pandemic, was a real shift in people moving into or wanting to go immediately into private practice right out of school. And what I'll say is do not do that. Please do not do that for anybody who's on this call. Doesn't mean private practice is not a great option, but no starting social worker should be starting their own private practice immediately after graduation. Maybe starting a group practice. There's so much of that business side of knowing about coding, about billing, around taxes that you need to know before opening up a practice. And part of that advocacy work that we need to collectively be doing is raising the reimbursement rates and advocating for reimbursement rates collectively across the country, because that is how we give many clinical social workers at least a raise in spaces that they desperately need. And it is very challenging to advocate at the state level and national levels for any sort of large scale funding increases, because it's not sexy for the legislators to try to do. But we want to find creative ways to make sure social workers are getting paid and valued for your work. As you start doing your job search, whenever that comes for you, do your research on an organization. Make sure that you're tailoring your cover letter and your resumes to the specific job that you want. You might have a resume template or a cover letter template. That's great, but make sure that you're putting in language that's specific to the job you're applying for, that you're doing your Google searches of maybe the people that are interviewing you. There's a shift kind of in workforce culture around wanting salary transparency, wanting to know about organizational culture, asking for interview questions ahead of time. There's lots of things to make that process smoother and better for everybody. And I think we're moving in a lot of good directions for that. I think for the macro folks in here, it's a different sort of job search than for the clinical folks, because you're likely going to be looking for positions that aren't titled social work. So you might be looking at policy director or grant writer or agency coordinator or community organizer. And so, we've had some other sessions and we have some materials available specifically for folks who might be exploring those pathways or career opportunities in social work. And the other piece of advice I'll say as you go through your social work journey is say yes to experiences. Social work will surprise you in places it will allow you to go and the rooms that you'll be able to be in. If you just surround yourself by people who are maybe mentors or are in places you would like to be, do those informational interviews, ask to serve on a board of directors, look at your state government's appointments. Students can be appointed to boards, task force, and commissions just like anybody else if you have interest in state. Our governor has created the first ever LGBT commission. And so we were able to get 3 social workers appointed to that first ever state commission, and that's going to provide recommendations around services and policies. We have a growing Michigan council, which is all about how do we retain and grow our state's population. We had social work town halls. There's really cool spaces to be a part of, and don't be afraid to like pat yourself on the back, uh, elevate your colleagues, and also, social workers, we like to call out inequality and issues we see in practice, and that's perfectly fine and accepted. Do that. We want to make each other better. We want to grow. Assume good intent with your classmates. There's probably going to be things that are said in your classroom that you're like, that maybe wasn't the right wording. Or they're at a different space than I'm at, or maybe they didn't come from the sort of background that I did. And it can be very challenging to be in those spaces, sometimes even as social workers. But I think in an election year, I have no doubt that you all are having some really important conversations in your classrooms. There's so much terrible things happening in the world that impacts social workers and our clients that we have to be advocating for, or against, depending. And we know that at our state levels, we have such a diverse group of states that are still on this call. I know some of you are in states that are really going backwards politically in a lot of areas that relate to social work practice, and that's really challenging. What does it look like to be a social worker in a state where you can't talk about gender or race, or you can't provide resources on reproductive justice? And how might your career potentially have legal jeopardy if you do things that are ethical? And so partially we need to have those conversations openly as a social work community, while also getting better people elected or fighting policies at the local and federal level. So I hope you all will be a part of that work. I love social work. Social workers are doing fantastic stuff, interesting stuff. We have social workers that work with chickens and dogs and robots, and like, it's an endless opportunity for workers. Other questions? Advice? All right, well, we'll go ahead then and wrap up for tonight. I hope to see you all at our September meeting. We'll have a couple of really good programs. Our next one is going to be on macro opportunities in social work. Our October program is going to be on how to be engaged in the election for the last 3 weeks building up to November. We've got sessions on imposter syndrome, lots of cool stuff coming up. So please be on the lookout. I appreciate you all being here, taking your evening or your afternoon with me. If you need anything throughout your career journey, please know that I'm available, or anyone at the NASW at your local or national. So hope everyone has a good night, and good luck on your social work program as you start over the next couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody.